Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the All in Crypto podcast. I am your host, Rupert, and today I am delighted and excited once again to have John Wood, the CTO of the Algorand Foundation, back on the show. How are you, John?
Good. Listen, Rupert, thank you so much for having me on again. Love coming on All in Crypto to tell your viewers about all the cool things we're doing at Algorand.
Yeah, and we've got a lot to discuss. There's lots of things happening. We, of course, are predominantly today going to be talking about staking, but I'm sure there's going to be some other avenues we'll venture off into. And I think the first place, because it's been a little bit of time since me and you last caught up, to start is with, what have you been up to, John? How has your past couple of months looked?
Yeah, well, it's been super busy. I think, we're working on a hell of a lot of stuff. 2024 largely as well was really, really a huge year for Algorand from a technical point of view. So we rolled out in Q1 what we call the Sicilian Defense, which was, we have this chess-themed roadmap, so it's pretty cool. So really, this was a change to dynamic round time. So folks know in blockchains, there are, of course, blocks. These blocks come along with a certain frequency. In Bitcoin, it's every 10 minutes or so. In something like Ethereum, maybe every 12 seconds or so with 15-minute finality. And in Algorand, it's every kind of 2.5 seconds or so, 2.7 seconds. Prior to that, it was above 3. So we've reduced that down to block time. So this means more transactions per second, essentially. That was the first thing we did this year. We then went on to do AlgoKit version 2. So, these blockchains, these programmable blockchains like Ethereum and Algorand and others, they are essentially programmable networks. And so really they're like operating systems that you run these little smart contracts on or little apps on. And so we wanted to make it really easy for people to get involved. It's no good if it's too complicated to figure out unless you're a computer engineer, right? So we made this product we call AlgoKit. And this year we dropped this version 2. And this brought something huge. It brought the ability to write these little apps that run on blockchains, these smart contracts, using Python, just regular, normal Python that you would learn in high school or you would learn in your first year of university when you're understanding computer engineering. And so this means that it opens Algorand to a huge range of people. There's millions of developers globally who understand and speak Python, right? And so now Algorand is a platform that they can build on if they want to bring a blockchain element to their software engineering. We went on to do non-archival relays, which were essentially making the network a bit more efficient, removing some of the carbon usage from the network. But the two biggest things for our 2024 roadmap are just about to drop, and they are, as you kind of briefly mentioned earlier, staking rewards. So we're transitioning Algorand away from being a network that does not reward block production or the validation of transactions. Doesn't pay anything at the moment. We're moving away from that. And we're moving to a place where Algorand, similar to Bitcoin and Ethereum and Cardano as an example, Algorand will pay validators. It will pay the people out there who propose blocks and add blocks to the blockchain and keep the network moving. And so this is a really significant pivot in the thinking around how Algorand should work. Previously, it was thought that people would stake their algo for no reward and support the security of the network. But, what we saw transpire was that in reality, not as many people as one would hope came out to support the network. We didn't have as much stake online as we wanted. And so you look at the example set by other networks, Ethereum, Bitcoin, and others, and they do reward that validation process. And so we decided to take the pivot and say, you know what? Maybe that makes sense. Maybe we can take all the great things that Algorand is, the pure proof of stake, the instant finality, blah, 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 the great developer tools, and we can talk about those things a little bit more if you'd like, but also add to that the idea that you would be rewarded for producing blocks and for staking your algo. And so we're about to drop this huge change. And so Christmas is obviously, we're coming up real close, but we're going to be rolling out BetaNet, which is our kind of testy environment in December. And then in early January, we're going to be rolling out our mainnet deployment of this, and then people all over the world can get involved, staking their algo and earning rewards for securing the network.
Brilliant. I think this is going to be a fundamentally massive change. We already know there's been a surge of about 2,000 nodes. So people coming on now, I think they know they're going to be incentivized to help run the network. They're starting to do that. We're seeing that. I ultimately think this is, to use the word bullish for Algorand as a whole. I think bullish is actually an understatement, but we're going to get into all of why that is, I'm sure, during the course of this interview. You mentioned something else big that's coming after staking. Can we complete that sort of roadmap before we then go back and start to break everything down?
Yeah, definitely. So the last thing, I'm glad you brought it up, is a change to how data flows in the Algorand network. So in all these blockchain networks, right, what are they fundamentally? They're, of course, a bunch of computers globally connected to each other that are running a piece of software, okay? And so in any blockchain network, this swarm or cluster of computers globally, they have to be able to communicate with each other over the internet, and they do. And so there's different ways that you can send that information between these computers. And so right now, Algorand uses what's known sometimes as a relay model or a hub and spoke model. And what this really means is that there's 100 or so big relay computers that are responsible for basically being a super highway of information that the nodes inside the network will connect to and listen to for information. And so this is fine, but it's not as decentralized as we would like. We want to move to a place that Algorand is maximally decentralized. Now, so what do you do? What do you replace this kind of superhighway with? Well, the answer is a peer-to-peer model. And what does that mean? It means that the computers that are globally distributed in this kind of like swarm of computers, they will talk, to one another over like a spider web of information. They'll all talk to each other. They'll all communicate with their neighbor. Their neighbor will communicate with someone else. And so information like flows throughout the network, person to person or peer to peer. And so this is a much more decentralized way to do it. It's essentially how Bitcoin works, essentially how Algorand works. How Ethereum works. And so we want to also have Algorand work like that and maximize the decentralization. And the reason I said that kind of these two things kind of come hand in hand or kind of marry well together, a bit like strawberries and cream, is because
Depending on who
chocolate
you
and
are.
orange, my favorite.
Yeah. Or pineapple and pizza. We've got an Italian
Maybe.
behind the scenes who's going to be pulling his hair out at that one. But yeah.
Yeah. So the reason they go well together is because when you incentivize block production, as we're going to do with staking rewards, as you just said, right, the number of nodes in the network, it flies up, right? Because people want to get involved. You're going to have people coming out from all over the world running a node and getting involved. And so what does this do? The answer is that when peer-to-peer rolls out on top of a rich network of many, many nodes, there is many more pathways between all of these different nodes all over the world. So if you only had a handful of nodes, a handful of computers running Algorand, then you'd have less pathways. But now when we roll out this consensus incentives change or the staking rewards change, the number of nodes in the network will bloom, as you said, to over 2,000. And then that gives you a wonderful, very dense number of pathways with which blocks and information in the network can flow. And it's really super decentralized because the more nodes, the more pathways, etc. And so we feel that staking rewards, which is the incentivization of block production or the rewarding of block production, and peer-to-peer, which is the changing of the network data flow from hub and spoke or relay to peer-to-peer style of data propagation. We feel like these two technologies will essentially maximally decentralize and maximally secure Algorand.
Yeah, it's truly fascinating when you think about the kind of theories behind, when you read the Satoshi white paper, he's got a whole section, he, she, they, whoever Satoshi was. Maybe we're all Satoshi, who knows? According to Michael Saylor, that's the case anyway. But he will use has a piece about incentivization. And I think this is something that a lot of people are still trying to figure out. But the route that Algorand is going down, I think it's going to be very successful in regards to people partaking in the network. And we're already seeing that. And we can talk about rewards and things like this and governance and all these kind of things that come off the back end of that.
Maybe Ripper, just one super quick point on that, because it's an interesting point in that paper, and I've read it. And so in the Bitcoin white paper, it's talking about proof of work and why you would need to incentivize the exercise of proof of work. Now, of course, there's something special here that I want to call out. Algorand isn't a proof of work network, it's a proof of stake network. But it's not just normal proof of stake, it's a very special form of proof of stake known as pure proof of stake. Now, we can jump into the technical details, but essentially, Algorand lets you run consensus. So when you want to stake your algo, you only need a very simple computer. Okay, you don't need a computer with 256 gigs or 512 gigs of error correcting RAM. You don't need a computer with petabytes of disk storage. You can take my favorite commodity computer at the moment, which is super cheap and super great, is the basic Mac Mini. Right, Apple have this Mac Mini product. It's about the size of a wallet. It's a little square, and it's got this M4 processor inside. It's about $700. And you can run an Algorand node happily on this little device that it will just sip, 30 watts of juice or whatever. You won't even notice it on your electricity bill, right? And so you can stake millions, billions if you had it of algo on a single M4 Mac Mini, right? For a few $100. And if you don't want to use an Apple computer, which many people don't, you can go and you can buy a small commodity mini PC for the same price or less. And so you can run this Algorand consensus without heating up your home because the computer's working so hard, without giving your parents or your wife or your husband a fright because or your flatmates a fright because you run the electricity bill up so much. It's really easy, and you can run it on this simple hardware. Whereas if you look at what Satoshi was talking about, he knew or they knew that executing the Bitcoin proof of work algorithm to secure Bitcoin was going to be computationally intensive. And so Algorand really has the best of all three worlds in the sense that you get rewarded. Well, you will get rewarded. You don't just yet, but when we launch this thing, you'll get rewarded. Number two, you can run this on a simple computer. You don't have to have a data center. You don't have to have a computer that costs you $5,000, $10,000. You can run it on a computer for a couple $100. And number three, we are, by definition, the way pure proof of stake works and the way it differentiates itself from proof of stake, which is something like, say, for example, Ethereum uses, we are incentivizing the individual. It is completely and entirely possible and in fact encouraged for a single person to be running a staking operation on a single computer. Whereas with many of these other networks, you typically would need a pool of people working together, or you typically would need a very heavy amount of hardware to make sure that you are executing consensus properly. So we think it's super lightweight. It's going to be really great to reward people for securing the network, and we think people are going to love it.
Yeah, I think so too. I think we're already seeing the sort of fruits of all that, certainly with the amount of people that are already coming online from a node point of view. It's going to be very interesting to see what the kind of stake percentage in regards to the overall Algorand out there ends up being. That's going to be a really interesting metric to watch. I think there's going to be a little bit of that dependent on rewards and things like this. And I think it's going to make Algorand from an actual partaking in the network point of view infinitely sort of more partaken in than where it sort of currently is today. Not to say that it's, you don't have that participation, but that's going to increase. We're seeing that through the likes of the nodes, which I think is really interesting. So we've got the four sort of parts thing, and I really want to focus on staking. The first two that you mentioned, it is worth us just spending a little bit of time on quickly. So you mentioned the block time.
Yep.
What has the performance increase been to Algorand as a network? Because people often miss these changes that take place because with Algorand, they're so seamless, right?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't want to speak with too much hubris because you can software engineering is hard and distributed networks are hard to run. So people have downtime sometime, and that's okay. But yeah, we were lucky. Yeah, I think that it's a combination of hard work and luck, of course. But in general, Algorand has been fortunate because it's had no downtime so far, and so all of the upgrades that we've put in over the last 4 or 5 years have all been seamless. But sometime in the future, it's not impossible to have hiccups. I mean, it happens all the time. Many networks have had it. But you need to strive for great uptime. I mean, obviously 100% is wonderful, but production grade systems in traditional banks would have 5 nines, 6 nines, whatever it might be of uptime. And so, 99.99999% of the time, and that's where you want to be. And so, yeah, it's been good. And so we're expecting, of course, and are hoping that we've put the effort that we've put into both the software engineering for this change and the quality of testing that we've done, and we have tested this thing really deeply. We'll make sure that when we roll it out in public, it will be seamless. Now, speaking to what you mentioned, the change that I mentioned earlier, which we call dynamic lambda, it essentially reduced the block time from about 3.3, 3.4 seconds down to around 2.7 seconds or so, 2.6 sometimes. It kind of ebbs and flows up and down a little bit. And so that essentially moved the transactions per second on Algorand's mainnet from, so as in the number of transactions that Algorand can process in production at any one time, went from about, I would say, 7,500 per second to the current standard, which is about 10,000 transactions a second.
Wow.
Now, it depends on what's in the blocks. If your block is full of very complicated smart contracts doing really heavy things, of course, that number won't stay exactly at 10,000. It'll dip a little bit. But in a given block for Algorand, we have seen well over 10,000 transactions a second when they were payment transactions. But yeah, on average, 10,000 TPS is what it currently supports, which is really, really quite quick. And I think, obviously, in all things in life related to volume and bandwidth, typically more is better. But at 10,000 transactions a second on Algorand mainnet right now, no one is waiting to have their transaction processed. When a transaction is in a block within 2.7 seconds, it's final. So we don't have this idea of confirmations because we
Yes.
use a consensus mechanism that doesn't rely upon confirmations. So you don't have to wait. As soon as your transaction is included within 2.5 seconds or 2.7 seconds, it's final, and you can trust that it's sent. And of course, all of this happens in an environment that's, the global network is essentially using about as much power as a charging Tesla or so. It's my favorite kind of comparison, because a Tesla uses about, when you're charging at a supercharger, about 80 kilowatts of instantaneous energy when it's charging. And so the entire Algorand network, all of these nodes, because they're low power devices, typically the entire network only uses about 80 kilowatts of electricity, which is like, not a lot. As I said, it's like a charging Tesla.
Yeah, let's not even compare that to Bitcoin or some of the other sort of proof of stake or other concepts out there in regards to the energy that they use. But they're fundamentally different designs, And this is the beautiful thing and why I wanted to go back to that is because when you look at Algorand as a layer one blockchain, that is very impressive. 10,000, potentially 10,000. What it was before that is extremely impressive without any kind of layer twos on top of it or band-aids over it as of yet. I call them band-aids because I think, you're better off sort of figuring out the layer one problem. Although sometimes there is definitely an argument that you can't do everything on a layer one. If you think about Algorand and all the use cases that it might enable, and I think there's going to be, certainly with AlgoKit, we might have the next YouTube being built on Algorand or something like that,
Yeah, potentially. Like Gary Gensler said, you could build Uber on it.
But and goodbye, Gary Gensler. That's a very positive outlook. What do you think about all that happened in the US? Bullish for the industry as a whole, Algorand? What do you think?
Yeah, so I live in Europe, so we're a little bit detached from it because, of course, we can't vote in the election or anything like that. But I mean, one would have to say, looking at the industry that we work in, you and I, it's been positive. I mean, it seems to me that essentially every layer one blockchain, layer two exchange, DeFi venue, wallet provider, like anyone I've talked to across both the Algorand and other ecosystems, Cardano and others, everyone is thrilled with essentially the new administration's generally pro crypto, or at least agnostic attitude towards crypto, like not vilifying it. And why should it be vilified? It's essentially a decentralized digital form of money. Why should we vilify that? We just have to make sure that we, like all products and all financial instruments, that we put the appropriate frameworks in place for people not to get hurt or scammed or otherwise by these things. But crypto is no more evil than the internet is evil. It's just a way to transact and a way to exchange value, and to do so in a permissionless, censorship resistant, and self-sovereign way. I mean, it's an incredibly powerful asset class. And so I'm delighted that we now have fresh thinking with the US regulator. Of course, like I said, I'm closer to the FCA in the UK than I would be to the SEC. But at the same time, America, as you're clearly aware, is a a world leader in setting regulation and also in terms of sentiment for many global markets. And so wonderful to see both the White House have a pro crypto administration, to have set up things like I see them setting up like advisory groups with people
Yeah.
like Charles Hoskinson and others, trying to understand the industry more fundamentally, more intrinsically. That's a great thing if that transpires. And then, of course, having an SEC chair who is nuanced in their thinking
Yep.
and who is hopefully careful with not damaging innovation within the United States. I mean, it's a hugely, hugely positive thing for the industry, and I was personally thrilled.
Yeah, me too. I think Paul Atkins as well being sort of named as the new SEC chair. One of the first videos I saw was him actually bashing the Howey test as it relates to digital
Okay,
assets. And I was just like, okay, this
really?
guy kind of yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's spoken on a number of individual cryptos as well. I mean, it just seems like a really, in many ways, and maybe it's just because we're in this industry, focused new regime that's coming in towards the crypto space. And I think on the back end of that, we're about to witness an arms race towards this technology, quite literally an arms race
Yeah.
towards new forms of value, enabling value, new social.
Mm.
I really glamorize it because I truly do believe that is what's to come. And I think Algorand being able to enable that sort of stuff is very, very well positioned. We just spoke about the reduction in block time and the ramifications that has for the network. Before we move on to AlgoKit quickly, and then we're going to get into staking, which we really need to get into. Does Algorand have a roadmap to scale past its current limit? I've got to ask you about that, because let's say everyone starts using Algorand. All the central banks in the world, let's just say this happens. All the governments in the world, everybody starts using Algorand. How would you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, so we can scale up further. We've been very conservative, and I say we, I mean the engineering team at Algorand Technologies, and indeed any decisions we have discussed together. We've been conservative in the selection of the parameters around this dynamic lambda, and the selection of the parameters around how the block times, how the network reacts, how data flows, and so Algorand at a fundamental level can absolutely scale significantly higher in terms of transactions per second than it currently is. I'm pulling this number out of the air because I have not deeply looked into this, because essentially we've been looking at other things. We think there's more important things right now to work on because we feel like it's the transaction per second metric currently is fit for purpose as we currently have demand. But I suspect we'd probably be able to get to 20 or 25,000 fairly easily. Well, there's things, and so how would we do that? The answer would be tweaking dynamic lambda further, changing the block size potentially, changing maybe propagation or decoupling, i.e. you might do something like pipelining transaction flows and stuff like that. So there's various ways we could explore of doing it that are kind of like low-hanging fruit that we still haven't touched yet. So we know absolutely that we can go faster than we currently are. But it's like when you're rolling out changes, it's like a lovely place to be if you can roll out a change without being too aggressive, like without kind of walking to the edge of the cliff, right? Because you don't want to push the Top Gun Maverick style. You don't
Yeah.
want to push the jet to like Mach 11 and then find that the thing falls off, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
we're conservative when we
Yeah,
roll
no,
these changes out.
I just thought I had to ask that because I mean, there's a very clear adoption of this technology in a real impactful way coming,
Yeah.
and there's going to be a lot of usage that comes on the back end of it. Blockchain is going to do far more than revolutionize the financial industry. I mean, it doesn't do everything, but it does do a lot. Certainly, when you talk about social system, identity systems, all of this stuff.
Oh, absolutely. And I actually think, here's a handful of things that I'm super excited about. Number one, the idea of autonomous agents. Like,
Yes.
it's very difficult to give an AI agent or an LLM based agent access to a traditional bank account. But can you imbue them with some crypto balance so that they have a self-sovereign store of value that they can have true ownership on? Yes, you can. And this allows AI agents essentially to act as automatons. And so this is a very interesting thing to me. The second is AI, and I know that word is a little bit like used to sometimes extract money from investors, but I think that we've seen an explosion in the capabilities of generative AI, and that's everyone is aware of that. The ChatGPT type things can read a story to your kids, or they can help you with your quantum mechanics homework. You can generate videos, as we've seen, and generate many funny videos are generated online where you see unusual people paired together in certain circumstances and stuff. And so, it's cool. What I think, and by the way, people used to say, "Oh, crypto and AI, perfect match, AI coins." That to me is I'm not so interested in some of that hype. Where I think that there's a couple of places where crypto will really have an impact or join or have a natural marriage with AI. One is in ensuring the veracity or the integrity of information.
The
And so,
provenance. Yeah.
we have situations that now, like I watched a video the other day and it was so crystal clear, I actually got duped by it. Like I think it was a video of Kamala Harris or something like that. But it took me I was reading the comments before I realized it was fake. That has not happened to me before because I was always able to tell by the fingers or the eyes or the mouth, or there was giveaways. But this generative models are getting so good now that, like, on first glance, even someone who's used to it was tricked by it. So I think that there's a potential, a really cool business, a value proposition, rather, not business case, but value proposition, where blockchain can attest to, or cryptographically, we'll have some kind of system where it'll be all seamless, but where you'll see a little checkbox to say that this content has been produced by the White House, or this content has been produced by such and such a reporter or such and such a person. And if you roll that attestation, that, like, thumbs up that you can be sure mathematically this is real stuff. If you roll that out on a post-quantum blockchain, a blockchain that has post-quantum security, like Algorand currently enjoys to some degree, and will extend further shortly, you are essentially able to ensure the correctness and the integrity of information at a global scale in a way that cannot be interfered with even by theoretical quantum computers. And that is a powerful value proposition. And the second one, and I don't want to take up too much time, but the second one is the democratization of AI models. So, like, right now, like Llama 3 came out yesterday, or Llama 3.3. I wanted to play with it. You can do it, by the way, using OLlama, but I went to Meta's website to try and get it. Meta wouldn't give me Llama 3.3 because I'm an EU citizen and they don't distribute it directly into Europe. So that's not very cool. They talk about it being open source, and they've done a great job, by the way, at moving these things forward. But they don't give you the training data, so you can't train it yourself. Not that I could, because it would take mega years. But, like, they also, in some cases, restrict access to these models. And in certain jurisdictions, models like 70 billion parameter super capable models will be illegal because they'll be considered munitions or weapons. So can you use crypto in a way to Byzantine, fault tolerant, train models in a distributed context? So people all over the world are working on parts and then reconstitute it together in a way that's, you can detect errors, you can weed out badness that's been put in by bad actors. Like I said, just like Bitcoin removes false transactions, or Algorand stops bad transactions going through. The answer is yes, and it's an emerging field of study. But I think from the papers I've read, I think it's possible to do this from a technical point of view. And if we do that, and we can truly democratize the training of models in a distributed context where everyone works together and everyone who's put the effort in to train them also has the access to use them, we're creating economies around access to huge swaths of data. And I think that that's a very cool thing. Training AI models in a Byzantine fault tolerant way with blockchain and creating an economy around inference. Both of those things I think are super cool. And so, yeah, I'm very excited. I think and this is so important, why you need a US government that's wants this kind of innovation in the country, right? And that's why I think it's so important.
I absolutely agree. You can very much these kind of AI. It's almost like an AI marketplace. Like, if you think about Bitcoin with the CPUs, really what you're doing is swapping those CPU, or some of them might arguably definitely use CPUs and GPUs, but you're swapping them out with these AI components that you create this marketplace and you can incentivize. And this is the beautiful thing. I think Chainlink really showed to me that distributed ledgers can be used for unbelievable things when they basically incentivize data, right? And now we can extend from that, and you can tokenize data. You can use it for provenance in AI models. We speak to people that are doing decentralized knowledge graphs. The world, like the changes that are fundamentally happening under the hood, a lot of people don't know about, but they are revolutionary ideas and principles that this technology is kind of at the forefront of. So it's very interesting. I think Algorand's going to cut out a slice of that pie. AlgoKit's obviously out. have we seen some sort of an uptick in regards to development taking place on Algorand from your point of view before we move on to staking?
So absolutely, and we're going to be publishing metrics on it soon. But like the numbers are really good. They're a lot better than I thought. You're looking at nearly tens of thousands of downloads. I mean, they'll come out with the exact numbers shortly. But it's like it really shows a swell in terms of the number of people that are interested in it. And in a nutshell, 2024 was about Python on Algorand, bringing the Python language in a normal, semantically normal, syntactically normal way, not some weird flavor of Python, like not like Algo Python, but just Python. We brought it. Now you can build apps in Python. 2025, actually, sorry, we've been working in 2024, and we're about to release in January. I think it is going to be in January, but I should double check that. In January 2025, so i.e. next month, we'll release AlgoKit version 3. And so version 2 brought Python. Version 3 will bring TypeScript.
Wow.
Support. So TypeScript, another major language for the folks who are not geeks out there. It's like another super easy, super popular programming language for writing web apps, and in this case, Algorand apps. And we're also going to be bringing line by line and visual debugging. And so, I know not everyone's a developer, but essentially when you write your code, you write your program, you got to make sure, many times you will run it and it won't run the way you expect. And that's like, a large part of a software engineer's time is spent figuring out why the program isn't doing what the engineer thought it should do with the code that they wrote. And so we want to make that really easy. We want to make it visual, like literally, so you can see the transactions flow. We want to be able to step through your code and understand what's happening at every line. This is normal stuff for normal software engineers, but in blockchain, not that common. And so we are bringing industry-leading debugging and TypeScript to AlgoKit with version 3.0, which is dropping with a cool new name, hopefully very, very shortly. And then the longer-term roadmap for AlgoKit version 4 and beyond, I won't get into just now, but we're thinking and talking about that stuff, so we're not stopping with TypeScript and Visual Debug.
Brilliant. Who is that? Is it Microsoft? Who's the developers?
Steve Ballmer.
Steve Ballmer. That's Steve Ballmer. I feel like that's kind of the mantra with Algorand also, and enabling them to develop.
Well, it's Rib, it's got to be, because like, at its core, sure. I mean, like Algorand is a network that you can have your tokens and you can build community, but its core reason to exist is this idea that you run these smart contracts or these little apps that do something like, hold money for your daughter until she's 21, or I don't know, trustlessly trade with someone who you can't fully trust. And so you got to make it easy for people to build those things. And if it's not easy, then you're missing a trick, because the chain's raison d'etre, its reason to exist is to provide this feature,
Absolutely. And that's going to bring us perfectly onto staking. So where we're currently at with that roadmap, staking, maybe we quickly explain the current meta for staking as it is on Algorand. You mentioned that it's not incentivized, and then what the model that we're now moving on to is, and that will give it a nice kind of overview, I think.
Sure. So the current model is that anyone out there who holds any algo whatsoever can start staking that algo. It takes about 10 minutes to create your keys and start staking the algo. And so we are still going to be in a world where after this change, after we roll out staking rewards, which is what we've branded this new incentivized consensus execution, we call it staking rewards because it's simple and it's to the point. And so we want to reward those who are staking. And why do we want people to stake? Staking algo directly increases the security of the network. The more algo that's staked, the more maximizing of the security, the more maximal the security of Algorand will be. And so if you look at the various blockchains that are out there that are successful, and I think maybe Ethereum as the kind of like archetype or whatever of programmable blockchains, about 25% or so, it ebbs and flows, but about 25% of all ETH is staked, okay, supporting the security of Ethereum. So we need to get to a place where, well, not need to, but we're targeting getting to a place where about 25% or so of all algo is staked. Currently, actually, let me just quickly check because I have a little dashboard here. So currently,
sorry to interrupt you there, John. So is the sort of reason why you want to really sort of explain this to people, because people often say, okay, well, why do we need more stake pools? Why do we need more participation in the network? Is it for the same reason that you don't end up with a 51% attack on the network? Is that the reason why you want to incentivize more players so it's harder to gain that share of the network to do nefarious things?
Well, it's a great question. So I mentioned the more algo that's staked, the more secure the network is. Right now, about 13% of all algo in the world that's ever, that can ever exist is staked on Algorand. Now, Ethereum's got kind of like double that number, right? It's got like about twice as much of the Ethereum supply is staked. And so really we want to kind of like, we want to 2x this thing. We want to move from a 1.25 billion algo being staked to kind of a 2.5 to 3 billion algo being staked. And then by doing that, we quite literally make the network much more costly to attack and much more secure. What else can I say on this? I think it's not so much that we're worried about a 50% attack, because to really control Algorand, it's not a 50% that you need. From a mathematical point of view, if you look through, yeah, because it's randomness and because of the structure of how consensus works, you actually need about 80% of all algo in that's public to attack the network properly.
Good luck, by the way, for anybody that thinks they can try that. I mean, yeah, no chance.
Well, this is kind of like, the mathematical kind of breakdown in the white paper. That's the kind of number percentage that you would need to truly control the network the way you would be able to with a 51% attack on Bitcoin. But there is something that is something that we would like to change. And so right now, the Algorand Foundation stakes algo as well, right? We use some of the treasury, and we support the security of the network. Well, we don't love the idea of being a big part of the security of the network, because we feel that that's a form of centralization. We want to be out of that staking game, or maybe stake an insubstantive amount, a small amount, just a token amount, just to show that we still understand our network and we're still supporting it. But we want to be, a very small percentage of the global staking set. All of the stake out there added up, we want to be only a tiny little bit. And we want to incentivize or try to bring to the party the individual, the person who lives in London, the person who lives in New York, the person who lives in Mumbai, the person who lives in Berlin. We want these, people out there who we don't know to come and bring their algo and stake their algo and support the network, because crowdsourcing security is a lot easier than trying to get like VCs and other large holders to do it. So I'm much less interested in like a VC or the Algorand Foundation staking their algo. I'm much more interested in an ocean of people out there getting involved and having a reason to turn on that computer, install the cool software we're going to release to make it easy to run, and getting their Algorand online. Because that's where, just like with the training of the LLMs I described, where you democratize AI training over a decentralized network by crowdsourcing the security, which is essentially what Bitcoin and Ethereum have done. You end up in a place where you're maximally secure. And by the way, one other thing, staking on Algorand is not going to be the same as staking on Ethereum. It's going to be, I think, the best form of staking that I've ever seen. And maybe the reason we were able to do this is because we came to this like this year. Like, we looked at all of the ways it could be done. We, of course, knew the architecture of Algorand because the team built it. And we thought, what is the best form of staking we could deliver, right? Just like, what is the best phone you could deliver? What's the best car you could deliver? And we really thought about it from a product point of view. And so, here's 5 things. 1, I mentioned earlier, super low hardware requirements, right? You can run this thing on a wristwatch, right? Like maybe an Apple Watch Pro, you could probably run this thing on. Number 2, you're going to get rewards in real time. So I mentioned the block times every 2 and a bit seconds, right? You're going to get those rewards paid every 2 and a bit seconds. So you don't have to wait a week. You don't have to wait an epoch. If you win a block, or if you have the winning proposal for a block, you will get paid within 2.5 seconds. Number 3, there's no slashing, so you can't lose your algo when you bring an account online, or you bring your algo online to stake it. You are essentially creating a new key, which will be used to sign blocks on behalf of your algo. But your actual private key for your algo, so your precious 24 words, you don't have to put that anywhere near a computer. So there's There's no slashing. Your algo can't be taken. Okay, it's a very secure way to run consensus. You'll have this fresh key pair, and you can't lose your algo. Number 4, there's no lockup. So in many blockchains, you kind of have to lock your tokens for some period of time in order to kind of enter and exit the consensus execution. So we don't have any lockup. And then finally, 5, we're going to have great software that, like, because not everyone is comfy using a computer, and so we need to make it so that a regular person who's not an engineer can have a piece of software that kind of installs the node software for them, the core software they need, lets them know when there's an update required, helps them on the process of creating this like little key pair I mentioned you need to create to keep your algo separate from your staking activities. Will let them know if they've won a block, right? I call it win a block, but if they propose a block successfully, and they should expect some rewards, so they'll be able to see how successful they've been and or how unlucky they've been, because of course it's all randomness. And then finally, they'll be able to see the health of their node. So if something's not performing correctly, or the computer is too slow or whatever, the software will be like, hey, you're not performing correctly. You need to change X, Y, or Z. So those 5 things: low hardware, real-time rewards, no slashing, no lockup, and great software. I think it's going to bring a wonderful user experience to this thing.
Yeah, I believe so as well. And I think we're already seeing people sort of prepare themselves to start running nodes, and likely start to get Algorand so that they can sort of stake it and perhaps receive rewards, because there's a real incentivization point to all of this. What I want to kind of get into now, we can talk a little bit about rewards, but actually how people are going to take part in this. So there's 2 partakers in this. There's the node operators, which we've got our node up and running at the moment. I'm sure there's many people out there that are doing the same thing. Like we say, 2,000 plus nodes came online. How that operation takes place, and also how the operation of people wanting to stake their Algorand takes place. So you can take it in whichever order you want.
Yeah, sure. So right now, anyone with any amount of algo, like 1 algo, 10 algo, which will cost like cents, right? Those folks can bring their algo online and stake it to support the security of the network. Now, if you bring a minuscule couple of cents of algo online, of course, you're not going to be producing very many blocks. Indeed, from a distributed network point of view, and from a consensus messages point of view, because when people are running, when nodes are running consensus, and accounts are online, and everyone's engaging and running the VRF, this verifiable random function, and running pure proof of stake, there's messages passed around the network. And so in order to maximize the efficiency of that data flow, we have set a floor to the amount of algo that a single account can go online with. What this means is that you will need to run a node on your own in a vanilla, traditional way. You're just running a single node. No one's helping you. You're not pooling. It's just you. If it's just you, you'll need to have 30,000 algo to go online. Now, if you compare that to...
Sorry to interrupt you. That was about a third of the cost only a couple of weeks ago that it is today. But, so there's the thing is, the more... I don't know, there's definitely dynamics there in regards to... Not that we want to venture into that, but I'm talking from personal experience here. I can tell you that actually you could have had that 30,000 Algorand at a third of where it currently is today, only a couple of weeks ago, just to drop that in there for anybody that's interested.
Right. So it was about $3,500 that you need of algo that you need, and now it's about $14,000
Absolutely.
of algo at the current rate. But the 30,000 number, we didn't take that from the dollar value. The way we calculated that is the total amount of algo in the whole world is the fixed supply of 10 billion algo. So you take 10 billion and you divide it in 30,000, and you come out with a certain number. And we needed a hard limit on the number of validators. Now, it's still enormous, right? If you divide 10 billion by 30,000, it's still like thousands and thousands and thousands of validators. There's plenty of room for everyone to get involved. But one of the mitigations we wanted to put in place from a security point of view is that we couldn't have a bad actor buy 50,000 algo, bring one algo online on like 50,000 nodes, and start clogging the network with useless messages, right? So this is the kind of thinking we're doing. Whenever you're rolling out changes to a blockchain network, one of the most important things I've learned from my time at Cardano, my time here, my time at working on Ethereum at Consensus is you got to think about all the ways that the network could be forced to do work cheaply. So
Yes.
work could be anything. It could be like computing things. It could be passing messages. It could be like using bandwidth. It could be like burning electricity. And so you always try to frame it. So when we took, like, say, 10 billion, let me see what it is. I just don't want to misspeak.
No, it is very, very interesting, because you can imagine if anybody could just set up a node with any number of Algorand, you're going to get people that will probably spam it. It's human nature, I think, for a lot of people out there, certainly bad actors.
Totally. And so, look, a quick calculator on my computer here. Assuming I got the numbers of zeros right, we will be able to have over 300,000 validators out there. Okay, wow. So it'll be 333,000 validators. Like, we only have, as you said, 2,000 nodes, so we got plenty of room. What we didn't want to have is a situation where we had potentially 1 billion validators, right? And some bad actor could cause damage. So we didn't just pluck the 30,000 out of nowhere. We spent a lot of time modeling it and making sure that it was the right move. And by the way, we went to the community and we said to the community, look, we think we could, on the safe side, 5,000 is the lowest amount of algo that we would suggest. Okay. 10,000 is another option, and then we suggested 30,000. And so we gave them kind of 3 options. We went to governance, and they voted on this. The community voted. All the people with algo out there voted, including myself and anyone else who holds any algo. And so essentially unanimously, it came back that we should do 30,000. It was the best for the network. But you are right, and indeed, as the dollar price increases, maybe it's something as a community we should look at. And I believe Ethereum is thinking about the same thing, right? Because
lowering it
currently. Yep. Like, it's 32 ETH. I think ETH is nearly $4,000. So that's $128,000, which is obviously way more clearly than Algorand it would cost you. But I've seen Vitalik's speech at the staking summit when I was there delivering the news of staking rewards, and he was speaking about dropping the amount of ETH that you will need to stake. So these things can be tweaked, but right now 30,000 algo. But here's the thing. You don't have to worry about that, because that 30,000 algo minimum is only for folks who want to run their node at home on their own. If you would prefer not to manage a computer, not to dedicate one of these M4 Mac Minis or equivalent PC to this process, and you just want to be involved, but you want to do it in a way that's like a light touch. You don't want to have to worry about staking keys and software. There's 2 great ways you can get involved. Additionally, great ways. Number 1, you can use our DeFi venues, which will have a liquid staking option. And so what you'll do is you will send your algo, in this case, maybe, for example, any amount, let's say 10,000 algo, 5,000 algo, 1,000 algo. You will send that algo to, say, Folks Finance, okay, that provide a liquid staking service. And they will issue you a kind of an IOU that they call, I think it's X-Algo, I think is what it's called. I'll have to double check that. And so this IOU, you'll be able to redeem back for your algo whenever you want. And they will pool everyone's algo together. So your 1,000 algo, my 500 algo, the guy over there is 2,000, the girl over there is 20,000. And they'll obviously have so many customers that they'll be able to pool it all into a big account and stake. And so you will earn the rewards using liquid staking without having to suffer this kind of minimum algo. So if you can't afford 30,000 algo, you don't have 30,000 algo, you don't want 30,000 algo, that's okay. You can use any amount below that with liquid staking. The second way I'd like to speak about is a very cool new technology that we've rolled out called peer-to-peer pools. Now, in Cardano, as an example, classically a delegated staking type of setup, what you do is a person out there will run a pool, okay? And there's lots and lots of pools out there, but let's just say you're running your pool. Folks will send their algo to you, will delegate to you. They don't actually send their Cardano to you. They kind of like create a message on the chain that kind of delegates to your pool. So you have the right to stake on their behalf, but not actually physically their ADA. So we thought about as a group, one of the guys in our ecosystem, one of the firms in our ecosystem, known as TXN Labs, these guys had an idea, and they were like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could have pools kind of like Cardano, but in a way that like they're on chain, they use smart contracts, and they're really peer-to-peer. It's like Anyone can start one. Anyone can run one. Anyone can enter one. Anyone can leave one, and you can get involved as heavily or as little as you'd like. And so they produced this technology known as peer-to-peer pooling. They call it Ready Pools, is what they call it, or ETI, after the chess move. And essentially, anyone can start a pool. So let's say you decide, for all of your viewers, you got an all-in crypto pool, right? It takes you 2 seconds. You roll a templated smart contract from a factory. We have this like little factory you can hit, and it'll push out your pool. You can set your parameters. So you can say, I want to have this many stakers minimum, this many stakers maximum. I want to have, this is my fee. So you can set your fee, because of course it's up to you what kind of fee you charge, just similar to Cardano. And then you can open your pool and people can come in. So if you're a person with 200 algo, 2000 algo, whatever, some number that's under the minimum, you can just pick your pool, drop your algo into that smart contract. It's all open source. And then your algo will be staked on your behalf. And we have a fourth way as well, but it's a little bit more complicated. Essentially, you can have someone create a participation key for you or a staking key for you, and then run the node for you. A bit similar, maybe closer to Cardano. So with these 4 ways, vanilla, where you run your own computer and you sort out your own keys and you manage the software. DeFi, where you send your algo into a DeFi venue, into a smart contract, and they issue you an IOU for that algo and they stake on your behalf. Peer-to-peer pools, where you and your friends can cluster together in a smart contract on the chain, and one of you can run a node. Or finally, having someone a bit like Cardano basically take your staking keys and running a staking operation on your behalf directly by taking those keys. We have 4 great ways people can get involved, and I think if you look at them, there's enough options there for everyone from a super technical person to a not at all technical person to get a benefit from staking rewards, and also to ensure that they are part of the fun.
Yeah, we're absolutely going to do guides on all 4 of those ways. There's absolutely no doubt about that on our website. And of course, we'll make videos, step-by-step guides on how to sort of take part in that. Obviously, we're going to be running a node. I don't know what the sort of DeFi, I don't know how they're going to be pooling that, their own pools they'll use, or we'll look at lots of different things. Before I let you go, John, I've absolutely got to press you on rewards. And then I will love and leave you. Rewards for somebody running a node. Why would you want to run a node?
Right. So, I mean, the original vision was you run it just because you want to secure the network. But of course, we don't see enough people doing that. So now, how does the reward look? So maybe I can frame it like this. There's a lot of kind of knobs that you got to twist on this, because just like Bitcoin,
of course,
the amount of hash rate online, the amount of people who are running proof of work, it changes the amount of Bitcoin that you can expect to earn. And so in a proof of stake network, or a pure proof of stake network, the parameters are what the reward is directly from the fees, how much of the token on the network, how much algo is staked. I mean, if you're a single participant and there's only a small amount of algo stake, then you'll earn more than if you're a single participant with that same amount of stake. And there's a large global amount of stake, you'll earn less, of course. And so we've had to pick some sane values we think are reasonable values for what we expect to see. So this is not an absolute guarantee, and things may look different when we launch, but indicatively, with the amount of algo we hope / expect to see staked, which is somewhere between 2 and 3 billion, more or less. With the rewards as they're currently looking, so if I look now at the Algorand Foundation rewards that are going to be part of the staking reward paid to the block producer, and the fees that are currently in blocks. So if I look at the kind of status quo, a person today who has 100 algo staked should expect to see in a given year about 6.5 to 7 algo returned on that as rewards on that 100 algo.
So about 6% or 7%.
Yeah, exactly.
And in terms of actually the node point of view, running a node, you're getting the fees plus the basic reward.
Right. So basically, the Algorand Foundation, in order to get people involved in this for the first number of years, we are going to add a kind of a bonus era. So we have this kind of era where it's the fees in the block plus an extra amount of algo that's being given by the Algorand Foundation. And so all of that adds up to the number that I mentioned. And over the course of 2 years, the amount of algo that the Algorand Foundation contributes towards the rewards will drop off, just like Bitcoin rewards slowly get smaller. And we're expecting over those years for the volume on the chain, of course, to go up and the fees to become more meaningful. So you'll have this kind of swing out where the foundation will give less and then the fees will contribute more. So block producers will still be incentivized in years to come. But yeah, so indicatively, based on the numbers we expect to see, for every 100 algo you have staked, you would expect to see 6.5 to 7 algo rewarded per year. And that would very favorably compare typically with other networks that are out there, and because there are many networks that you can choose to stake on or whatever. And so we think it's an industry-leading reward.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Algorand is an industry-leading blockchain, let alone just the staking side of things. I absolutely love Algorand. I think it's doing unbelievable things. I think it's a pioneer in the space. It's setting kind of standards that other people or other blockchains should try and aspire to implement themselves. We absolutely love Algorand and we absolutely love having you on, John. There's so many more things we could have spoke about, but we'll have to get you back on once again. I'm very mindful of the time. So, John, we're going to leave links to where people can find you. Is there anywhere you want to push people?
Yes, check out canablockchaindothat.com. We have a new marketing campaign that we're running, and we're pretty proud of it. So we like to say Algorand can.
Algorand can, yeah, absolutely. Remember that one, and we'll leave a link to that in the description. John, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming on again. I look forward to having you back on sometime soon.
Same, anytime.